Welcome back to Coachology in 20, where we learn coaching concepts in just 20 minutes. If you're tuned in, please say hi, let me know where you're tuned in from. And if you've got any questions as we go through today's topic, just drop them in the comments box. I can see we've got Adele tuned in. Adele, thank you for being here every session. Tune in and giving your wisdom and support on the topics of coaching. I really appreciate you being here. Now, if you're a new coach, get your tablet ready, get your notebook ready, get ready to take notes, get your questions ready. If there's anything that I'm explaining and you need to know a little bit more information, you want to ask these questions, this is the space for you to ask me what you need to help you move forward. If you're a seasoned coach, if you're an experienced coach, then please share your wisdom, share your thoughts. I'm going to be asking questions to you in the comments box. Please share your tips. We're using the space together so we can all learn together in this space every Monday. So Jesse's tuned in. Jesse, it's wonderful to see you here again. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing that you're from the UK as well. So UK and South Africa present. So what we're going to be looking at today, so if you're an experienced coach, this shouldn't be new to you, so it should be a little bit of a refresher. So let me test your knowledge as well. We're going to be looking at the 5 levels of listening, probably the most important skill that we need to understand and we need to master as a coach. But as always, I've got a question for you before we get into today. And I want to ask you, I want you to be honest here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at listening? How would you rate yourself? And be careful what you put in the comments box today, because if you rate yourself high, I'm going to be testing you today. So there's going to be a bit of a listening test as part of today's session. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you believe you are at listening? Because I honestly believe we all think that we're better listeners than we actually are. I remember I used to think I was an excellent listener until I found coaching. When I started to get into coaching, start to understand what it really truly meant to listen, it opened up my eyes that I wasn't a good listener at all. So we've got Roseanne is saying she's a 6.5. Roseanne, it's wonderful to see you here as well. Thank you so much for being back. I know you're very frequent here at our Coachology sessions, and I really appreciate you too. Adele is saying a 7, so we've got a 6.5 and a 7. They're looking like some honest answers. And granted, you're looking at an average here. You know, there's going to be different things, different stages with our lives where we listen better, different people we listen better to. We might be going through something serious in our lives. Things might be happening. We have a lot of mind chatter. Maybe we have a lack of confidence or self-belief that might be affecting the way in which we listen. So thank you, Jesse, for your vulnerability and being so honest here. Not very good, probably 3 out of 4 out of 10. And Jesse, I've seen you coach and you've listened really well. When I've seen you coach, you do listen really well. So thank you for sharing that. Still working on it. Wonderful. So thank you for your honesty. So keep in mind, there's going to be a little bit of a listening test as of today. So part of today's session. So please pay attention to what I'm sharing and let's see if you can pass the test in a few slides' time. But before we get started, let's start with a famous quote from Stephen Covey. I've paraphrased this, but the majority of the work that we look at Coaching Minds, we look at the 5 levels of listening, is the work of Stephen Covey. So that forms the foundations, and we've built on that as a coaching organization. And for any coach that hasn't read the book already, please add this to your reading list. It's a must book for all coaches, and that is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It wasn't originally drafted to train and develop coaches, but I think it's the most wonderful book, or one of the most wonderful books that we can read to really shape ourselves as individuals to prepare ourselves to be able to coach. Remember, everything that we do in terms of development and coaching needs to start with ourselves before we start sharing it with other people. But the quote that I want to open up with, and this is where we need to get to as a coach, we need to understand our role as a coach when it comes to listening, is that we don't listen to respond, we listen to understand. This is the key of today. This is where we need to get to as a coach. Think about your conversations that you have with your friends, your family, your colleagues. On a day-to-day, we are really listening to respond. We very rarely listen to understand. Unless you've gone through some formal communication training or you're trained to be a coach, you won't really know the difference between the two. But when we're talking with our friends, let's say one of our friends is planning a trip or they've been to a certain country, let's say Spain, France, Croatia, they've been to one of these countries. Our mind, if we've been there or it's somewhere that we want to go, we want to jump in and respond. We want to share our experience of what it was like in Spain, or our desire to go to France, or wherever it is. We're waiting for that opportunity to be part of that conversation so we can respond with our thoughts. Not really trying to understand where they're going in Spain or France or Croatia or what they want to do, what they want to achieve. We don't hold that space and listen to understand why it is they're sharing that and what they're hoping to achieve by that holiday. We always in our day-to-day lives want to listen to respond. We can't do that as a coach. Our role as a coach is to listen to our clients, to understand, not to respond. And this is when I get to level 4 and level 5. One of the key differences, I'm going to share them with you very soon, but one thing to keep in mind, the difference between the coaches that can listen at a really deep level and the coaches that are stuck at that level 4 is those that as soon as they think of a question in their coaching space, they stop paying attention, they stop listening because they're waiting for that moment, they're waiting for that gap to ask that question. If you're an experienced and skilled coach, you'll think of multiple questions, you'll put a pin in your mind, or you'll make a quick note of it to come back to it later, but you will capture that question. You'll not wait to jump in. You want to hear more information, you want to hear the full story, you want to hear everything that the client's sharing, so then you can decide which the next question is best to ask. And that's listen to understand. That's the difference between jumping from level 4 to level 5. But let's take a look at these 5 levels of listening. So the first one is ignorance, where we just ignore, we don't listen. I don't know why it's a level of listen, but we need to start somewhere. But we don't actually listen at all at level 1. People are talking to us, and I'm not just talking about clients. So level 1, 2, 3, we need to not be here as a client, as a coach. So if we think that we're at level 1, so as I go through there, think what level you're at as a coach right now. If you're at level 1, level 2, or level 3, just before we get into this, you should not be a coach. We always want to be at level 4 or 5 and moving from level 4 into a professional coach at level 5. You need to have at least a level 4 in order for you to start to think about becoming a coach. So level 1, as we can see, is just to ignore. So in our day-to-day conversations, people are trying to talk to us, employees are trying to talk to us, whoever it is, we don't pay attention. We don't give them any response. We don't pay attention. We just ignore them. That is level 1. Level 2 is cosmetic listening. So this is where we pretend to listen. So our body signs might be saying that we're listening. We might give the occasional, yes, I understand, or nod, but we're not really listening to the information that's coming through. We just want to show that individual that we're listening in a pretend manner, in a cosmetic way, so they feel heard. But we're not actually paying attention to anything that they're sharing with us. This is why, as coaches, you can see we're not going to make a very successful coach if we ignore our clients or we're pretending to listen to what it is that they're sharing. I can see we've got a comment in the comments box here from Adele. Adele is saying, asking the right questions to get the answers the client is looking for. That could be an illustration of a great coach from level 4 to level 5. So level 2 is cosmetic. Straightforward, easy to understand. This is where we're pretending to listen, but we're not taking in any of the information. Level 3 is selective listening. Now, some of us might be at this level with certain individuals. We might have friends that really bore us at times, or that we're not really interested in what they do, their hobbies, but we are selective in what we listen to. Maybe we've got a manager that nags us or an employee at work that we just cannot connect with on a deeper level. So what we do is what's known as selective listening. This is where we choose certain information. We're engaged in the conversation. We're engaged in listening when the topic of the conversation is of interest to us. But the moment that they talk about something we're not interested in, something that we disagree with, we zone out and we stop listening. So we selectively choose the parts of the conversation that we want to actively engage and communicate in. So this is level 3. This is going up the ladder into selective listening. Again, as a coach, we can't be a selective listener. We're not going to create a successful coaching practice if we're just picking and choosing the parts of the information that the client is sharing with us to engage, interact, and question further. So level 3, a selective listening, is a big no-no for us as a coach. Now, the level we want to get at, and what a lot of coaches, when you come into coaching, you are going to be already there. You're already going to start at this level. It's known as attentive listening. And this is what a lot of coaching organizations, a lot of schools, the MCC, ICF, they'll talk about this level 4 of attentive listening. This is the basic level of listening that we need to start with as a coach. There's different variations of what this is, but in a nutshell, attentive listening is where we're there, we're present, we're listening to the information that's being shared, we're gathering enough of the information, we're being curious with the information that is being shared, and we can summarize and we can play that back to our clients. We're paying attention to our clients. So at this level 4, this is the basic level that we need as a coach to really make a difference in the conversations that we're having with our clients. But there's a level that we can go beyond this, and this is what Stephen Covey suggests in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he didn't write this specifically for coaches. This is for us just to develop as individuals, as humans, in our work, with our relationships, how we can develop as individuals. So even as not a coach, if we're not even practicing to be a coach, moving from level 4 to level 5 can actually be beneficial in who we are as an individual. And level 5 is moving from just paying attention and just being curious and just being able to pick up the words, rephrase it, summarize it back to our clients, or mirror it back to our clients. We then move into what's known as empathetic listening. And the big difference here is we're really putting ourselves in, or trying to put ourselves in, the shoes of the clients. We're not just listening to the words, we're listening to the emotions that's being shared. We're really trying to understand the situation and what's going on, or the desire or the goal, whatever it is they're working towards, whether we're looking to help them with a goal or whether we're helping to overcome problems and challenges. But we're really trying to put ourselves in the perspective of the client through our questioning, through our presence, through the way we listen. And we as a coach need to make that move from being just attentive to empathetic. We need to get to that deep level of listening. So this is also known as deep level of listening. So we're not just capturing the information, we're looking at the emotions, we're viewing the whole situation as a whole. And one of the key skills moving from level 4 to level 5, I'm going to give you a few tips in a moment, but one of the key skills is how we create that space of psychological safety. A difference, for example, if I was to give you a difference between a level 4 coach and a level 5 listening coach, a level 4 coach will be great at capturing the information of what's being said, be able to relay that back to the client and then follow up with a question. But a level 4 coach might run the risk of just staying focused on what the client is sharing with them, staying focused on just the content, the facts, not looking at the emotions and maybe the intention and what's really going on for the client. Where a level 5 coach will be able to spot changes in body language, changes in the way in which the energy of the client is when they're sharing information, to know that there's a good question to ask there. For example, I've noticed that every time we talk about this topic, you make a change, you put your head down, you observe the body language, and you follow up with a question. You're not just focused on what the client is sharing with us. So one of the key differences between level 4 and level 5 is the ability to spot things that's not being said and ask those questions to really look at the information that's making a change in the body language of those that we are coaching. Rosanna is saying here, listening with care and seeking emotional connection to the speaker's experience. Thank you for sharing that, Rosanna. That beautifully captures and sums up level 5, because we do need to come from a place of care. Everything we've learned about in our Coachology, and we looked at the 4 C's of trust, and we talked about how to build rapport, that all comes into place for us to reach this level 5 of empathetic listening. And it is all about care and seeking that emotional connection with our clients. But going back to what we shared in it wasn't our last session, but a couple of sessions before, we looked at the difference between empathy and sympathy, being careful with that emotional connection so it doesn't become too heavy for us as a coach. There's a lot to think about with coaching. It's not all straightforward. We have a difficult role as a coach. There's lots of skills we have to learn. We've got to be really great with ourselves to really become the best coach we can possibly be. So thank you for sharing that, Rosanna. That's really wonderful. Now I'm going to give you a quick test. So for those of you who said you're a high level of listening, whether you shared it in the comments box or not, listen test from what I've just shared in the first 10 minutes. What is the 3rd level of listening? Drop it in the comments box. What was the 3rd level of listening that I mentioned to you? Have we been paying attention? Are we listening to today's session? I did give you a heads up that there's going to be a listening test. What is the 3rd level of listening? Next, how should we listen as a coach? Adele says selective. Well done, Adele. You were listening. How should we listen as a coach? The Stephen Covey quote that I paraphrased. Razan's saying empathetic. Empathetic was level 5. Oh, that's how we go to as a coach. That's how we should listen as a coach. But the first slide, Jesse's saying empathetic as well. Thank you, Jesse. So empathetic is how we should listen as a coach. Attentive listening is good. So we can get to level 4. Level 4 is an acceptable coach. We can still be a great coach at level 4, but if we really want to improve ourselves and be better, level 5 is where we need to get to. Razan has captured it. We need to listen to understand, not respond. The intention that we need to set as a coach before every session is we're not listening to respond. We're not listening to give questions. We're not listening. And a lot of our coaches, again, there's another difference between a level 4 and a level 5 coach that listens at a deeper level. A lot of level 4 coaches will put pressure on themselves to get progress, to get something, some kind of value from that session, that they become distracted and so focused on trying to get the value from the session that they miss the good questions, the information that's being shared, the signs in the body language to ask the right questions to get an understanding and progress from that session. It's because we're too busy listening to respond and not listening to understand. It's the most important thing we can take away from today is that as a coach, we need to listen to understand. And final, last question on the listen test. I mentioned 3 countries when I give you an example. Can anybody remember what those 3 countries were? Let's see if you can get one of them. I use this as the illustration when it says we have a conversation with a friend or a colleague and how we can jump to respond without listening to understand. What were the 3 countries that I mentioned? Razan says Spain, France. I cannot recall the last one. No, great listen there. Spain, France were 2 that I mentioned, and I mentioned one more. Anybody remember what I mentioned? So this is a bit of a listening test. It's also an attention test as well to whether or not you're paying attention, but that all forms part of listening. Now, I'm waiting to see if anybody can get the 3rd country. I'll tell you at the end if nobody can. We're going to move on to, oops, I've left that. Sorry, that was from the last slide when I edited. But we're looking at 3 ways to improve listening. And before I get into this, I want to know, how do you as a coach, if you're a seasoned coach, an experienced coach, what helped you improve your listening? What tips or strategies can you share with everybody who's tuned in today and everybody who's going to be watching on the replay? What has helped you become a better listener as a coach? And I'm going to share 3 ways and which helped me and which we teach here also at Coaching Minds as well. One of them we teach at Coaching Minds. Over to you. I can see we've got a lot of people tuned in and just a couple of people commenting. How have you improved as a listener? What tips and strategies can you share with fellow coaches in terms of using this as a collaborative space that's helped you grow as a coach and become a better listener? Adela saying using silence and space, very, very powerful. Something we can definitely use as a coach. So instead of jumping in with our question, jumping in with that next question, just taking the time to digest what's shared, allow that space of silence for our clients and gather our thoughts together to understand that we've listened and to ask the question we want to ask. Razan saying create awareness to where I judge, then I learned how to stop the noise in my mind. Thank you for sharing that, Razan. Judgment and judgment in terms of what's being shared with us can be a big blocker, could be a bit of mind chatter for us. So it's good that you've captured and became aware where you might be judgmental and how you've stopped that before you jump in with a question. And we all go on this transition as a coach. So thank you for your honesty, Razan. I really appreciate it. Okay, so 3 ways. One of the ways that we teach at Coaching Minds, for those of you who are Coaching Minds coaches, you remember this from our module 1, is the deep listening triangle. So first of all, if we want to improve our listening skills, we need to first off set the intention to improve our skills. So we need to go into our coaching sessions with the intention that we're not there to respond, we're there to understand. To go in with an intention to maybe hold silence for longer periods or become aware of the judgmental thoughts that creep into our mind. But it all starts with the intention to want to improve our listening skills. We then need to look at what we also talk about in terms of attention. So we talked about attentive listening, how we give attention to our clients. That's great. That's all form of it. So how do we start to pay more attention to what's being said, what's not being said? How do we become more attentive to the body language of our clients? How do we start to pay more attention to the emotions? How do we become curious? How do we give more care into that space? And one of the tips I'm going to jump into it, share a little bit more, is reflection. So how do we reflect on our levels of listening? What is it that's stopping us from listening? Is it our mind chatter? Is it the fact that maybe the goal that the client is interested in is not interesting to us, and we just can't find a way to care about that? We need to be honest with ourselves. What is it that's stopping us from listening to our clients? It all comes from looking at and analyzing the level of attention that we give to our clients. And the third one on the triangle there is observation. So it's not just about paying attention to the words, it's about paying attention to the body language, it's about paying attention to the space, how we make it a space of psychological safety, what's not being said, what changes through certain topics. So it's about observing the space as a whole. The second tip is, in our crazy, fast-paced life, one of the things that we see frequently at Coaching Minds that stops a lot of coaches from being able to listen at that level 5 is we've just got too many things going on, too many notifications, too many things coming through our phone, too many emails, everything's cluttered, everything's going on. Our minds are really busy. So one tip, if we want to become better at listening, is to develop some kind of mindfulness ritual or mindfulness technique before every coaching session. And I'm not saying you have to sit on a cushion and meditate for half an hour like a monk, but just something for 2 to 5 minutes that really grounds you from everything that's going on outside of your coaching sessions. One thing I used to do is I just used to plug my headphones in for 3 minutes. I had a song that really used to ground me. I used to take some deep breaths and listen to an upbeat song just to remove everything that's going on, all the busy projects, everything I work on before I come to the session. Like I said, you've got to find your own technique, something that gets rid of that mind chatter, everything that's going on in your lives, and can bring you into a space with a focused intention. So think about a little mindset ritual, mindfulness ritual that you can implement. Anybody who's tuned in, do you have a mindful ritual? What do you do? I've shared, I used to listen to headphones and put that in. What do you do in terms of your ritual? So Adele's saying reflection on sessions is key. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Thank you for sharing that, Adele. That's really, really important. Preparing and limit distractions and interruptions, 100%. You know, that if we come late to a session, if we're running around at Coaching Minds, one of the things we advise is never have back-to-back coaching sessions. Always make sure you have a buffer period in between. Each buffer period will be different on different individuals and who needs to energize and how we energize and what time that takes. But never do back-to-back sessions, because if we go there unprepared, if we go there late, if we're fluttered, if we're distracted, we're not going to be able to be present, and we're not going to be able to listen at that deep level 5. So mindfulness and preparation. Thank you, Adele. And the last one is, which we just talked about, is reflection. Our reflection is so important. So we need to come away and think about, how did we listen in that session? What distracted us? What interrupted us? What got in the way? What mindset got in the way of us? Were we being judgmental? Did we have a bias? Did we got something going on in our lives that we can't digest or let go of when we go into our coaching sessions? Just understanding what stops us. And here's just a few reflective questions to get you thinking, because reflection is probably the most powerful tool that we can use, because then we can understand how we can adapt and move forward. And we all know, as a coach, if you're new to coaching, this will be new to you. But in order for us to be a successful and professional coach, we need to become a really good reflective practitioner. One of the program requirements of Coaching Minds and both our programs is your reflective hours. And they're not just there for you just to do and think about, they're there to help you grow. So think about this. Here's a question for you. Reflect on your last coaching session. If you haven't had any sessions recently, think of a last conversation that you had with a friend, family, manager, colleague, whatever. What level did you listen at for the most of that conversation? Were you at that level 5? Did you dip between level 4 and 5? Were you at level 3, level 4? Be honest with yourself. And then ask yourself after that, what prevented you from remaining at a deep level? What stopped you from building that emotional connection, from being there with that client, from trying to understand their perspective, to observing their body language, to creating that space of psychological safety? What was it that prevented you? Was it your own mind? Was it lack of self-doubt or lack of self-confidence? Was it you've got something going on in your life, or something happened just before you went into the session? Is it because you're putting too much pressure on yourself to get results from your session, that you lose and zone out of that level of deep level because you want to get progress? Lots of different reasons. Think of your own. You don't have to put this in the chat. I'm just giving you some reflective questions. And it's a simple 3-step question. This is the last question. What can you do to improve your listening in the next session? 3 simple reflective questions that can really help us develop and grow our listening skills. But first of all, we need to understand what it is that we're not doing, why we're not doing it, and then how we can change that. So what can you do to improve your listening next session? And the final point I want to leave you with today, before I bring in a couple of great comments here that people are sharing, is I see this a lot from coaches. Don't just practice your listening in your sessions. Practice it with every conversation that you do. Listen in your business meetings. Listen in your conversations with your friends, your colleagues, your manager. Try and get to that level 5 of deep listening with everybody you interact with, not just your clients. The more you practice this, the more it becomes natural to you, and you can take a step back and you can really try and listen before you jump in, and you're thinking about everything and starting to understand people, not just your clients. So a few comments here. Adele has said, find what works for you. Do not just implement what works for others. I do breathing exercises. And thank you so much for that, Adele. So don't just take what I shared about me putting headphones in, listen to music. That works for me. You've got to find what works for you, what just grounds you and brings you to a little bit of calm, a little bit of peace before you go into your sessions. This will help you become a better listener. And it's great, Adele, to hear that you do breathing exercises. People like to do body scans. People like to maybe do a little puzzle if it's something just to distract your mind. Just anything that works for you before your coaching session so you can bring your best self. Rosanna saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. That's brilliant. Acknowledge 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Why it works invites the brain to be present. So there's another technique that people have shared. So thank you so much, Rosanna, for sharing that. And if you're watching this on the replay, share your tips, share your techniques. What I shared, what Rosanne shared, what Adele shared are all very different. Find what works for you, but give everything a try. See if that works for you. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 might be a useful technique for you. So thank you so much. Rosanna saying family can be a tough one. Family indeed can be a tough one. I'm sure many of us struggle to understand our family, but as long as we go in with the intention to try to understand, that's going to help us shift our mindset and how we listen in our conversations. Remember, the easier something is to do in our day-to-day conversations, the easier it is to bring into our coaching sessions. So just practice listening to understand everybody you talk to. And just to say thank you, I want to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in. If you want to learn more, if you want to learn between these sessions, we're going to be back next Monday. Again, we're going to look at the different types of questions in coaching, what we can ask, what we can't ask. I'm going to be suggesting some great questions that you can bring in and introduce into your coaching practice. But if you want to learn more, we've got in the top left, which is probably your top right, because I think it's mirrored here. But in your top right, where it says more info, the cyan QR code, that will give you access to our free coaching resources here at Coaching Minds on our brand new website. We're building this out, so stay tuned. There'll be new client tools and everything and coaching tools for you to use on yourself as well over the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for more tools featuring there. If you want to learn more on the topics, before you spend thousands of pounds on a coaching program, please do scan the QR code on the screen, the little box there, and purchase our book, Coaching Essentials. It's £12.97. It might save you a lot of money in the long run, so you can understand what coaching is truly about before making those huge investments into your practice. It's really important, I think, for you as a coach to understand what coaching is all about, what's expected of you, what you need to do, and things that are not really frequently put out there. We're on a mission to make coaching affordable and accessible across the globe. Our book is one of them. You can get the free ebook version if you don't want something hardback, is on the resources section as well. So you can learn everything about coaching before investing your thousands and thousands of pounds on a program that you know nothing about. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody. Thank you who's tuned in. Thank you to Rosanne, Jesse, Adele for your comments. Thank you so much for your engagement, your tips, your experience, and to everybody who's watching in the background, taking notes and learning something from Coachology in 20. I look forward to seeing you next Monday. We're going to look at questioning, effective questioning in coaching, and how we can start to improve our question techniques to move our sessions forward. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful week ahead, and I'll speak to you all very soon.